All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our screening of the final round of the Mars or Bust Tournament High School Division. We are here with Debate Mate B from London, England, and Dysfunctional Debaters from Malaysia. I would like to give our debaters an opportunity to introduce themselves to the audience. Keep in mind, debaters, that we are going to be having some very impressive minds in the field of space exploration watching this tomorrow. So if you have anything you'd like to say, please give them a few words. Dysfunctional debaters, since you are coming in the lead at the #1 team, I'd like to invite you to speak first.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Just to say, we're really grateful for being able to make it here to the grand finals. It's such a good opportunity for us, especially this event, which has been managed very well, and we're just grateful to be here. I'm Arjun Jaya, the second speaker.
I'm Hannah, the first speaker. I'm Shameen, I'm the third speaker for Dysfunctional Debaters.
And we're all from Malaysia.
All right, fantastic. And now I'd like to invite the first and second speakers from Debate Mate B. Very impressive accomplishment. We're aware that you are one debate mate short, but still you've managed to pull in to the final. So congratulations on that. Reza, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Of course. So I'm Reza from London, and I mean, it's just a fantastic opportunity. When we started this competition, neither of us had done World Schools Debate style competition before, and we kind of just got thrown into it. So I don't think either of us expected to get this far, and however it ends up, we're incredibly lucky and incredibly grateful to get here.
Oh yes, just to echo Reza's words, we never thought that we'd make it this far in this competition because we've never done anything like it before. So we're just really proud of ourselves, and whatever happens today, we know that we did our best.
Fantastic. Well, we're very happy to have you. Robert Zubrin, he is the founder of the Mars Society Convention and one of the leaders in terms of promoting space travel to Mars. He has watched both of your teams throughout the process. And he had no influence on this except the rounds that he judged, but he expressed extreme admiration for both of your teams and stated that he was extremely impressed with both teams and that you guys have done amazingly. And I'm sure our audience tomorrow will be very impressed as well. Okay, dysfunctional debaters, I'm a bit concerned about the volume. Could you attempt to speak up again?
Yep. Just on my, is it loud and clear?
It is a bit quiet. I'm going to fetch some headphones and then we'll begin. Okay, be right back. Can everybody hear me with these headphones? Okay. And dysfunctional debaters, could you say something?
Yep. Are we more audible right now?
Try again.
Are we more audible right now?
Perfect. All right, we are ready. Okay. So with that in mind, I believe that the proposition according to the coin flip was Debate Mate B. Debate Mate B, are you ready to begin?
Yeah, of course. Sorry, just before I begin, I think your voice is a little muffled.
My voice or your competitor's voice?
Your voice.
Is it more clear when I hold my microphone up like this?
Yes, that's a lot better.
Okay, no worries. I'll make sure to do this if I need to let you know, but luckily for everybody, you all are going to be doing the majority of the talking. So, okay.
Of course. Thank you very much.
Let's begin.
Curiosity, spirit, perseverance. These are the names of just some of the robots we have sent to explore what we call the Red Planet. But they are inherently human traits. They are traits that humans can put forward if we settle Mars. Hello, everyone. My name is Reza, and today I will be the first speaker proposing the argument that this house believes that humans should settle on Mars within the next 15 years. The motion today is one that we have two assumptions for. The first is that we consider settling to establish a semi-permanent human presence, similar to that of how astronauts move to and from the International Space Station. And the second assumption is that eventually this will lead to us exploring the possibility of later colonization of the planet. Today, my team will be talking about a variety of different topics, but they can be summed up by two headers. The first, my point, discussing the impacts of settling on Mars on research and industry. And the second, Atifa's point, looking at the impacts of future human development. So without further ado, I'll start to get into my points. The first is research. I've already told you the names of some of the rovers that we have sent to Mars, and with the audience that we're expecting, I'm sure you already knew them. But the proposition today believes that people will be better than robots at exploring the planet, especially in the areas. Sorry?
POI.
Accepted?
Given that this situation is not just about the development of Mars and it concerns human lives, are you willing to rush such a risky operation in the first place?
So I think it's something that Atifa was going to discuss more in her speech, but I'll touch on it lightly now, which is that we don't think it is that risky of an operation. We've already sent people to the moon and we've already sent rovers to Mars. We have the technology in place to begin exploring the possibility of sending people to Mars. And it's something that we believe with the proper development, with the proper enthusiasm, which we know that the international community already has, is a goal that's incredibly achievable. And going back into what I was talking about earlier, people are inherently a lot more adaptable. They can respond to environments in ways that robots simply can't, and they can get observations that you couldn't get from a robot. If we do eventually have the goal of potentially colonizing Mars, we need to understand the impacts of the planet on people themselves, and we can't do that without sending them there and collecting subjective data, which is incredibly important to something like this. As well as looking at the impacts on people, by sending in humans rather than robots, we can quite literally unlock a new world of geology, climate, and the potential of past life on the planet. Right now, getting samples back to Earth is an expensive process. And by having people there that can conduct tests on the surface, we can begin to explore on a much higher scale and far more efficiently. Sorry, was that a POI earlier?
Yep.
I'd love to take it now.
Okay, considering that in 15 years, it is highly risky to send an entire civilization or even a team of people to Mars, wouldn't you end up doing human testing at the cost of human lives on your side when you say you want to explore Mars via humans?
So as I mentioned in the definition of the motion, we're not looking at colonizing Mars straight away. Within this first 15 years, our goal is to settle and establish a semi-permanent presence. And we have sent teams of people in the past to distant lands. We've sent them to the moon, and it's something that we believe is an achievable goal with the proper support from the international community, which, as I said earlier, is something that it looks like we have because there is more and more interest in properly exploring Mars. And in terms of looking at the impacts on health, it's something that we're not going to be able to understand until we've sent people there. And while it is unfortunate that there are risks to sending people there, it's something that we believe is outweighed by the potential for future development, which is what Atif is going to be touching on later. Moving away from research, I also want to look at the impact on industry. Mars is a completely different environment, and that means that there is the potential to unlock industrial processes that we might simply not be able to perform on Earth. I'm going to admit I'm probably not the most knowledgeable in this subject, but we are already seeing interest from industry in going to Mars and being able to use its minerals and resources in productive ways that can actually benefit life here on Earth. There is an abundance of minerals, or at least we predict there is on Mars, and this might be able to alleviate shortages on Earth in future as we begin to use up more rare materials in our ever-growing supply of technology. And finally, when I'm looking at industry, there is also the potential of tourism. This entire trip is one that the opposition has brought me out on a few times, saying that it might be impractical. But by sending people to Mars for the purposes of research, we can also eventually send them for the purposes of tourism. And being quite an expensive endeavor, something like tourism has the potential of funding research projects long term, which will allow for this sort of growing atmosphere around how we're settling on the planet and eventually hoping to colonize it, because funding will be a big part of this. So to conclude, the proposition today believes that we should be trying to settle Mars. We have an intrinsic curiosity and perseverance, and exploring our other planets is the natural next step to that. We believe that settling a semi-permanent presence on Mars will allow us to improve research and potentially unlock new industry. Thank you very much and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Okay, thank you very much. Opposition, are you ready?
Can I start my speech now? Okay. Give me 1 minute to truly settle everything. Okay. I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Today, I will first start off with a few rebuttals for site government. Then I will move on into our stance, our BOP, our setup. Then I would deliver 2 arguments. Number 1, there's a higher chance of something going wrong, and when something goes wrong, you sacrifice the entire Mars mission. Our second argument, you are forced to use current technologies to settle Mars as fast as possible. So, moving on into my rebuttals. Number 1, site government has failed to truly paint the way they would settle. Settling on Mars, or the settlement of Mars, is basically creating a civilization. And to create a civilization on Mars is to have a proper setup or a proper place to settle on Mars. Now they keep bringing up exploration, they keep bringing up tours and impact and profit. Settling on Mars is more towards the survivability of humans, which is something government has failed to paint on their side. Settlement is the proper development of Mars. Now, moving on, they managed to compare Mars to the moon, saying how easily achievable it is. Now, if that was the case, why can't we do it now? So risk-free, so highly achievable, then why is the limit 15 years instead of 5? Why is it 15 years instead of 1 if it's so highly achievable like they claim it to be? If that was the case, I would be a princess by now, but too bad I am not. Moving on, they keep talking about being able to make profit. But if that's the case, what's the point of rushing it so quickly to the point where we're compromising stuff like safety and resources, stuff that actually makes a civilization better? Okay. Terraforming. Settlement has to include the terraforming of Mars, not just being able to explore there. They say they want to send a whole civilization there without the proper development of settling on Mars. That is where site government has failed to truly characterize this debate. Moving on to our stance. Our stance is the settlement of Mars should be done in the most sustainable and safest way possible. Our burden of proof is that we will prove to you today how the rushing of Mars in a 15-year time limit is costly in terms of safety and resources. Our setup. Everything is a gamble, but when you rush things, it makes things even more of a gamble. We do believe that Mars is the most viable option. We're not saying that we shouldn't focus on Mars. It is the most viable option for human survivability. But we can't deny the settlement of Mars is a 50-50% gamble, even without the 15-year time limit. Now, on-site government, after you put the 50-50-year time limit, the 15-year time limit is no longer a 50-50% chance. It's actually lower. On-site government, they're lowering their chances of fully developing Mars. We're not saying that it isn't feasible. In fact, for this debate, we're making it incredibly fair and saying that the settlement of Mars is feasible. We're just saying on site government, because of that 15-year time limit, you are compromising things that makes a civilization better, making a civilization being able to survive, such as resources and safety. To the point, you're putting a 15-year time limit where it's too short, you're basically making it impossible to ensure anything on site government. Because it is such a hurry, everyone is cutting corners to settle on Mars, and that's where you compromise. Now, moving on into our first argumentation, there's a higher chance of something going wrong, and when something goes wrong, you sacrifice the entire Mars mission. Let me paint you a picture. Settlement of Mars is basically a potential for profit and development for many stakeholders ranging from governments and private companies. If you look at the status quo, all these stakeholders are already itching to stake their claim on Mars for selfish incentives like profit or power. We can see the parallel to the situation of landing on the moon, okay? And NASA or the US rushed the whole operation of landing on the moon in order to one-up Russia. Now imagine if that was the case, but instead of just one-upping each other, we're risking the whole human civilization. The settlement of Mars is inherently risky in the first place when compared to the moon mission, especially because it concerns human lives. Given that in status quo, the conditions on Mars are far from favorable for human survival. That should be the main concern. Yet on-site government, they claim it to be highly achievable. That is certainly most not the case. They are cherry-picking this motion in a way that favors them, where on our side, we're basically giving a level playing field for both sides. We hope that site government can contend to this new characterization of the settlement of Mars, instead of aiming for it to be highly achievable. Moving on, we cannot risk things to go wrong in the settlement of Mars due to the way the Earth is. We believe that the Earth is in a very dire situation. Once the Mars mission fails because of how much you rush it, humanity is now down an alternative. So instead of now we're just risking Mars, we're now putting both Mars and Earth at risk because of your rushing. Even worse, because stakeholders are now more likely to pour all resources ranging from technology and the brightest minds like the scientists to ensure the goal is achieved as fast as possible. Therefore, you speed up the dire situation of Earth as well as taking away all the resources. This leads to our second argumentation, which is you are forced to use current technologies to settle Mars as fast as possible. Because of the time limit, because of the 15-year time limit, we're now forced to use all the funding, resources, and technology that we currently have and pushing it all into the process of settling Mars. Because of all the resources you're taking away from Earth that's already in such a dire situation, you're basically quickening the death of Earth, something that we're currently living on, and you're gunning it all into Mars that is still a gamble. And because you're rushing it, you're even making it more of a gamble than it already was. So on the side government, you're not only losing on Mars, not the settlement, but rather the safety and precautions of it, but you're also risking the situation on Earth. You're basically making it a harder place to live with for human civilization. And if Mars does fail, we're not down an alternative as compared to side opposition, where at least we're able to make progress on both sides. Because of all the resources you're taking away from Earth that's already in such a dire situation, you're losing it. That means it makes it incredibly costly because we are taking what we have now as compared to what we could have in the future. And because of that, the outcome, at the very least, we ensure more cost effectiveness, more safety in our technology, and more give back as compared to site government. And with that, I would like to end my speech.
Could we have the second speaker from the government?
Very sorry, but can we clarify? It is 7-minute speech and not 8 minutes.
7 minutes for this particular.
You're muffled. We cannot hear you.
Yes, for our league is 7 minutes.
Okay, that makes more sense.
No worries.
Should I start now? In that case, good day, everyone. My name is Atifa, and I am the second speaker for side proposition, debating the motion that this House believes humans should settle Mars within the next 15 years. Firstly, to rebut what the opposition's first speaker, Hannah, said, you contradicted your own rebuttal in this debate, saying how we were rushing to Mars. And then you were saying, why aren't we going now if we're so ready and we have so many advancements, which simply shows the opposition's lack of understanding in this debate about what we were talking about and how they're not listening to our side while they claim to have a level playing field and a level non-biased argument. Additionally, we're not compromising, or we're just sending small research teams. We're not taking away all the human creativity on Earth. There's still people here. There's still scientists on Earth. We're just, like my first speaker, Reza, said, we're just sending people out there in order to create a small presence and to develop research there first so we can learn more about the environment there as well. Additionally, we're not getting rid of all the resources on Earth. As said before, we're only sending a small team there. We're just there to establish a presence. We're not getting rid of everything on Earth. We're not trying to destroy everything, which is what the opposition just seems to think that we, the proposition, are doing, which is simply not true. And that just shows their lack of understanding in this debate, dear judges. That just does not make sense. Now, I'm going to go into my main point of this argument. My overarching point for my argument, for my speech, is human development, which my first speaker, Reza, mentioned. And I would like to divide it into two subpoints, which I'll go in this order. How colonizing Mars is the crucial step for Earth, and additionally, how it improves innovation and technology here on the planet so we can benefit people back home as well. Firstly, going into my first point of my speech, colonizing Mars is a crucial step in expanding civilization beyond Earth, ensuring survival of the species in case of any catastrophic event. The opposition has already said that we will probably have to solve more problems. We have to solve the problems on Earth, and we can't keep running away from our problems and quote unquote rushing away. And how's the guarantee that we won't make the same mistakes? That's what they're probably going to say. But we like to refute this point, saying that they're wrong because while it is important to think about the long-term survival and immediate challenges and cost on Earth, worsen the situation on Earth already, and we need to fix those now. We can't possibly fix everything on Earth. Sorry, is that POI?
POI, please.
Oh yes, accept.
Considering that in this 15-year time frame, there is a way higher chance of something going wrong, wouldn't you risk the entire Mars mission on your side when you rush this out in your framing?
Okay, thank you for your lovely POI, but as said before, you don't seem to be listening to what we're saying. We're not sending the entirety of Earth's population onto Mars. We're sending a small team within the next 15 years, which we can do. We have sent rovers out there. We have had missions before, like the International Space Station, which is what my first speaker mentioned. And then, so we can send a small team to study the research there. We're not sending the entire population, which is what the opposition simply does not seem to understand. Additionally, going back to my speech, we have issues on Earth like climate change. There has been forest fires in Australia and California, which have been catastrophic for our planet during the recent years. And we have hurricanes that have gone beyond the category, like 5 categories. I'll come to you later. Beyond the category 5, like structure of the planet, like beyond that system, which is simply not doing our world any good. We have more flooding and then more people getting harmed. So it's imperative that we start looking for new ways to colonize Mars and establish a presence there. We need to start fresh on a new planet because, as I said before, we have so many social issues as well, such as gender pay gap and Black Lives Matter that we have not fixed on Earth yet. So we need a new fresh start. I'll take your POI now if you still have it.
Given that you disagree with our characterization in terms of the settlement of Mars, in terms of sending an entire civilization, that means that your entire case in terms of the benefits that you get exists in status quo with robots exploration in the first place. So why it's so important that you send humans there, a small group of humans in the next 15 years?
Thank you for your POI. As I said before, the point that we need to send humans there, the rovers were an example of how we can develop in the next 15 years to send humans onto Mars. Not that we're getting rid of humans, and we're not just sending more robots to Mars. We have humans there because, as my first speaker Reza said, we're more adaptable to situations. We're more creative. We can think outside of the box. And while we're not getting rid of all the human creativity here on Earth, we can still expand and into research and things such as that. Moving on into my next point. This effort to colonize Mars will drive innovation in various fields, leading technology in areas that can benefit life on Earth. Investing in technology for more immediate Earth-based activities, such as climate change or healthcare, may yield better benefits, which is really important for us as a civilization. Like my first speaker, Reza, mentioned, we have technology in place to send people to Mars. As I mentioned earlier, we have the rovers. We've had space missions there already. And then we are already learning and developing and seeing that in the next 15 years, who knows what we can do. As humans, we have the ability to be adaptable. We have the ability to be innovative. We have the ability to learn from new things, and in order to develop our kind and in order to better life for our civilization. We are developing as a society. By studying Mars, we are able to study its geology, like my first speaker mentioned, and then we can find minerals and mentioned before, and then we find cures for diseases on Earth, and maybe make more research. We can adapt. We can learn how to adapt the Earth in order to solve more environmental problems here, such as climate change. Who knows what we can find on Mars? If we send people there, if we settle them there, and have that small team presence on Mars already, who knows what us as humans can do? We can learn so many new things as well, which can be a great motivation for scientists, expanding new fields and maybe learning new things, getting industries involved, like my first speaker mentioned. It's vital that as a society, we are incredibly curious people. Humans are incredibly curious, as I just said. And it's vital that we keep learning new things and expanding efforts in order to benefit ourselves and benefit civilization as a whole. And this is why overall, as the second speaker of the proposition, we believe that we should settle on Mars in the next 15 years. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much. And do we have the second speaker of the opposition?
Would it be alright if I speak now?
Sorry, what was that?
Were you speaking? Sorry, we couldn't hear anything.
Do we have the second speaker of the opposition?
Yep. Let me set my timer.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Side proposition loses its debate the moment they tell you that when they concede that the settlement of Mars in their first speaker would be possible with enough international cooperation. What the entirety of our case was trying to prove to you, that there is not enough international cooperation now, that it is unfeasible in this current time to settle on Mars. They ignore all of this. Let me be clear, ladies and gentlemen, we still want to settle on Mars. What we tell you is that we cannot do this now. All the small benefits they highlight on their side, on tourism and resources, will still apply to our side. However, what we have entirely tried to prove to you, as it in the current day, is highly not cost effective. Ladies and gentlemen, if all the benefits they highlight are true, why aren't companies like NASA or SpaceX settling on Mars right now? Inherently, there is a much higher cost towards settling on Mars than the profits bring you. Our side stands for the side that when the technology is there, when it is cost effective, that is when you settle on Mars, and that is when you get all the benefits that that side entails. Firstly, as second speaker today, I'll give you a rebuttal on what they've said and give you 2 arguments. Firstly, on why you sacrifice alternatives for the survivability of humanity, and secondly, why our side keeps all the options open because we aim for the survivability of humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, the clash break on this debate is which side will prove to you that their benefits are more achievable. From side proposition, we've merely heard facts being said about what Mars can give you. We have not heard, on the other hand, that how their side will increase the speed of the settlement of Mars. Their entire case runs on the assumption that you can do this now. Even if we accept their faulty mechanism of you are just sending a team of scientists to Mars, it is still proven that it is very unlikely that you can do this in 15 years. Our side is the side of reality, their side is the side of a dream. Firstly, on addressing their mechanism, on the fact that they say that we are sending a research team, not an entire colony or a settlement. Two things on this. First of all, a settlement, as the motion states, would need enough people to ensure the sustainability of that settlement, which means you wouldn't just have scientists there, you would have engineers, workers building that settlement and doing other things. This just addresses their straw manning of what the settlement actually is. But secondly, this does not address our concern that we gave to you. You have to admit that if you want to settle on Mars, there is an extremely high risk towards doing it. The risk of weather storms destroying your entire settlement. On-site proposition's case, this is just way more likely because you do not have the technology, the research and whatnot there for it. They concede on this when they tell you that they want to send the humans there to test out the survivability. We do not support this way of using humans as lab rats in this manner. Yes, I'll take your POI.
Just to say, you just said that we were sending people out there in order to test the survivability of Earth. That's not what we were saying. We were saying we're sending there to research what Mars is like and researching the environment there on the planet, which shows that you, the opposition, are not listening.
Thank you for that. But my counter question is, why can't you just do that by safer means? Why can't you do that with robots, with satellites, with all the existing rovers that your first speaker has highlighted? Why do you need to actively sacrifice a human life in 15 years on a very dangerous mission? We would rather put humans on Mars when we know that we can guarantee their lives because we stand for basic human principles. Moving on to the second rebuttal on improving humanity, they say that Mars is needed for the survivability of humanity, but they don't exactly tell you how. They just say that it has more resources. In my following arguments, firstly, I'll prove to you why on their side, you sacrifice the alternatives for the improvement and survivability on humanity. Let's look at status quo, ladies and gentlemen. There are 101 climate problems to deal with, and you expect all efforts to be dropped in the name of settling on Mars. Let's take this debate in the real world. We want to settle on Mars just as much as side proposition, but the reason why you would settle on Mars is to prolong the survival of humanity. Prop is only focused on the what and not the why. Firstly, why resources will be taken away from climate projects or other more important things in the name of settling on Mars. Because governments have to allocate resources in status quo towards economy, military, social, and technology. Most likely, as a government, you would not want to take away resources from other areas because, for example, military has to protect the people, economy has to ensure poverty and inflation does not happen. So you would most likely take away resources from climate projects, which achieves the same purpose as the settlement of Mars, which on the life of humanity. So, but because settling of Mars is the same purpose of prolonging survival of humanity. Here is because governments are now have to meet this extremely unfeasible goal of settling Mars in 15 years. They will inherently Mars is enough for human survivable rather than our planet. So side opposition does not agree with this. We've all agreed that Mars is an addition to Earth, a backup to Earth, as side proposition says. And if anything happens to the Mars settlement that side proposition is banking so much on, what you'll have is an uninhabitable planet to fall back on. Now, the fourth argument I would like to present to you. Our side keeps all options open. We aim for the survivability of humanity. We are not merely achievement seekers, ladies and gentlemen. We care about what needs to be cared about. In our best case, we would live in two worlds where Mars is a settlement and Earth is our home. Even in our worst case, at the very least, you have a healthier Earth and the settlement we compromise that the settlement of Mars takes longer. But at the very least, you protect our planet instead of hoping on a false dream. If you compare this to what side ops worst case is, our side would have already won your favor, ladies and gentlemen. You gamble all your resources on a dream, an undeveloped, radiation-filled, oxygenless dream, and our side, we settle Mars when it needs to be settled. The survivability of humanity shouldn't be enough to make you care about Mars. The idea that Mars is enough to make you care about it. You don't need arbitrary timelines to make you care about Mars. Rather, we would like side proposition to address our concerns on the fact that if you rush settling on Mars, what will happen is that you risk the entire mission in of itself. When you rush things, you will inevitably need to cut corners. At the very least, they should concede that our side will cut corners less because governments have a larger time frame to work with. They do not need to meet an extremely unlikely goal. When you cut corners less, you are better able to ensure safety. You are better able to develop technologies that cost less, if they want to talk about cost, that cost less and are reusable, and you're better able to test things out. Inherently, you have much more safer Mars missions, which will lead to people trusting more in the Mars missions because it is very safe and it's proven. Whereas on their side, you have a higher chance of Mars missions failing, which means people lose favor and you abandon the settlement of Mars in its entirety because you thought you could do it in a smaller time frame. So proud to oppose. Thank you.
Okay, third speaker of the government. Are you ready?
Yep, all good. And I will be starting in 3, 2, and 1. Perfection is the enemy of success. Today, I fear that the opposition believes too much in humanity's lack of perseverance, and it is an argument that the proposition simply cannot take on. So today, I am here to address some of the points of clash that we have seen in this debate and address some of them. One of the big things that has come up quite a few times is that in 15 years, we are rushing the mission. In fact, it was mentioned that settling on Mars and colonizing the future is probably about a 50-50 chance, and that going in the next 15 years decreases that. These seem to be arbitrary numbers that have come out of nowhere. There's not a 50-50 chance. We have precedent. We have sent rovers to Mars. We have sent people into space. We know that these are achievable goals, but they are achievable with perseverance, something that the opposition doesn't seem to have. Sending people to Mars is not sacrifice. It is development. It is moving into the future, and it is taking those steps to improve. The opposition has mentioned that something going wrong has the potential of halting the whole mission to Mars. The proposition has to disagree. There is precedent in the past where missions have failed and we have continued to go again and again. The missions to the moon, they did not all succeed, but we kept going to the point that we are now confident in our ability to get to the moon, that we are a lot safer when we do go to the moon. And in fact, we're planning to go, I believe it's within the next 5 to 10 years, and establish bases there. There is precedent for going again after we have failed. The opposition seems to lack hope. They discuss their plans to settle Mars in the future. We agree. The difference between the proposition and opposition in this argument is that the proposition, the government, hopes to be proactive. We want to start making those moves so that when the time comes that we do need Mars, we are prepared, we are ready. And they're talking a bit about how we risk going there with the current technology that we have. The first thing is that going there with current technology doesn't limit the ability of going with better technology in the future. And by having a goal of going to Mars in the next 15 years, technology will inevitably improve. In the last 15 years, the iPad was introduced. And at the time, it was something that I don't think many people would have seen as realistic. Now we have seen the ability it has to work as a full computer and device. There have been massive leaps in technology, and the iPad is a very small scale one. But when we look at the world of physics and astrophysics in particular, we are looking at our ability to take photographs of black holes. We are looking at our ability to expand our scope, and moving to Mars is the natural next step in doing so. The opposition is also concerned with cost, which is a point that I completely understand, and it is one that we do need to be concerned about. But they themselves have mentioned that there is already interest from industry in moving towards Mars. And this interest in industry means that these missions are going to be at least partially funded by these industries. And secondly, they're discussing resources being taken away from projects such as climate. But the climate issue is not a coming one that is coming in the distant future. It's already here. And if we want the potential to take on a planet, if we want the potential to use Mars as that backup planet, we need to start now, because proper full-on colonization is going to take time. This next 15 years is the first stepping stone in our wider goals as a side, as a movement. I believe there was a POI earlier.
considering that on the principal matter, our side has more development because you have a larger time frame to work with. So wouldn't you rather wait for the appropriate technologies and safety measures to be implemented rather than just rush it out in 15 years?
So I think you're underestimating how much time 15 years can actually be, because though properly preparing is something that is very important, there is already the support. And if we set that 15-year goal, we're going to accomplish it. It's something that we believe is achievable. And like we're saying, it's not meant to be the whole mission. It is meant to be that first stepping stone into future development. We believe that we just need to start taking those steps if we want to accomplish our goals in the long term. Overall, the opposition today seems to lack hope. They seem to lack perseverance. They want to go to a planet, but they want to take incredible amounts of time to do so. Instead, the government today, we believe that by going in the next 15 years, we can begin our journeys into space and we can begin our exploration of the universe. These are achievable goals. There is precedent and we can accomplish it again. What is important is that we do not give up on those goals. And that today is why the proposition believes that we should be going to Mars within the next 15 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that in mind, can we have the third speaker from the opposition?
Hi, am I audible visible? Because we're sort of having connection issues here.
Yes, you are audible and
They all
visible.
froze again. All right, great. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. If you're confused about what proposition wants to achieve at the end of the day, you're not alone. First, they never mentioned the urgency of why you have to conduct the Mars mission in such a short amount of time in the first place. Given that their entire case never touched upon, and they cannot just assume that the Mars mission is going to be risk-free based on the current research that has been done in status quo. Because given that in status quo, there has been no progress made in terms of civilization survival on Mars, given the unfavorable conditions there, we tell you that is actually unfeasible, and that's why their case false. Rushing these operations make no sense, especially because if they want to bring up status quo where there's research being done, we tell you that that's highly unlikely. Secondly, no, how proposition's case depend highly on continuous exploration that they mentioned, because they seem to feel that settling on Mars just means sending a small team of scientists there in the first place. We tell you that sending human test subjects to conduct exploration in the first place is not the same as creating a civilization as stated in the motion. We tell you that there's no engagement from their side of the house after 24 minutes of side proposition on both sides of the house in order for this debate to work. We cannot deny that the Mars mission in general is going to be a gamble. On side opposition, we refuse to rush such a risky operation in the first place that concerns human lives, our future, and our survival. We refuse to take the settlement of a civilization so unseriously. 3 things then. First, in terms of science and development. Secondly, in terms of the success of the Mars mission. In terms of survival of humanity. First, in terms of science and development. From the beginning, the proposition brought up science and development and tourism as their main arguments from their side of the house. They undermined all of creating a 15-year timeline, right? Given that those things are extremely menial and unimportant in comparison to the survival of humanity, they automatically lose this debate because they would be on their side of the house. We tell you that when research is conducted in a longer time frame, which you exclusively get when you don't have any Wait, is it disconnecting? When you're allowed to a longer time frame to work on development and improve in existing technology, we tell you that you exclusively get that on our side because you're not
Yeah, why?
working with the technology in status quo. Yes, but first I want to confirm if we were clear just now. We were having a lot of connection issues.
There were a couple moments where a few words were dropped here and there, but for the majority of it, your speech was clear. Do your competitors agree? A debate might be. Do you
We
feel?
need to restart.
You were all in both.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll continue the timer in 3, 2, 1. So let's take proposition at their best, right? Where they're just sending a team of scientists and they're not actually testing out the survivable of Mars in the first place. We tell you that on their side, they will be exclusively working with technology in status quo. Because given that on their side, they never contended with the fact that we told you the Mars mission in the first place, especially when you're sending humans there, it requires a lot of resources and funds in the first place. So given that that's the case, it's highly likely that you will be taking resources from every other sector, for example, maintaining the situation on Earth right now in order to work on a gamble that isn't guaranteed. We tell you that even if we want to contend with research on their side, which we argue that is highly not as important as ensuring survival, even on their side of the house, there will be likely to be less development of their resources in the first place, given that they need to put all of them into the Mars mission, right? But before I move on, yes, I'll take that PY.
Of course, so you mentioned earlier that the people were sending their lab rats, but how do you suggest that in the future, like you've mentioned, when you want to go safely, how do you suggest that you already understand the impacts on people if no one's been before?
We tell you that there's no use rushing this operation, right? Because assuming that on your side, you actually have no guarantee in terms of whether how risk-free this thing is, you are sending them with basically no knowledge in, which means that what's more likely to happen on your side is that you're going to send team by team of scientists with a technology that you have not at once in the first place, which means that it's highly likely that you're just repeating the experiment over and over again without actually ensuring that they will be able to survive. We tell you that that's a non-argument. So, secondly, in terms of the success of the Mars mission, they tell us in our first speech that this is a highly achievable goal, considering that, they have already conducted research in status quo. We told you from first that that's extremely ridiculous, because given that the settlement of Mars is feasible, this debate wouldn't even exist in the first place, because if space exploration was so easy, then this Mars settlement would already happen in the first place. We say that on their side, they're actually not contending with emotion. But second, they told us in their third speech that perfection can never be achieved. However, they failed to realize that on their side, they're risking human lives and the potential entire civilization of humans in the first place. Two things then. First, we told you that the Mars mission is an inherent gamble in the first place, just like all forms of space exploration. When you rush things, especially in the Mars missions, which they cannot draw comparisons to the moon, where you're not actually letting humans live there, right? You're far more likely to jeopardize the operation in the first place. Given that Mars is supposed to be an option for survival, and given that Earth is in such a dire situation right now, it makes no sense to rush an operation that is such a gamble, and in return, you also jeopardize the survival of humanity on Earth by taking away their resources to work on Mars. We tell you that we are not against the exploration of Mars. We tell you that that is necessary. However, we tell you that setting such an impossible time limit in 15 years is impossible. So, in conclusion, we tell you that we can never ensure that Mars is the certainty of Mars. However, we tell you that we do it, number one, far more stable, and number two, far more safely on our side. So lastly, in terms of the survival of humanity, we tell you that they never engage with our characterization properly. They said that the settlement of Mars is not sending an entire civilization, which undermines their entire case in the first place. And they tell you that they want to send a team of scientists. We tell you that they still lost in terms of long-term survival. In status quo, we have found that the conditions of Mars are extremely unfavorable towards human survival, and by sending small teams of scientists there, it's not enough to create a civilization for long-term survival, which means that the Mars mission is not, we tell you that the Mars mission is not the only priority right now. Given that Earth is in a dire situation, putting all your resources into a mission that is rushed is it just doesn't make sense, considering that you will be also jeopardizing survival of humans. What's likely to happen on their side of the house is that by the time the Mars exploration is being done, the humans on Earth would have already died, which means that the civilization, by sending scientists there, wouldn't even exist in the first place. Because on side opposition, we refuse to take the settlement of a civilization so unseriously. We tell you, vote for side opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. And now for the reply speech by the opposition. Sorry. And now for the reply speech by the opposition and the 4-minute reply speech.
Yep, let me set my timer. Okay, I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. It's not that we lack hope, ladies and gentlemen. It is the fact that we are not intoxicated on the idea of a dream. We gave you principled mechanisms on what our side has over them. Firstly, you get more research done. Secondly, you have a larger time period to develop more safer and cost-effective technologies. You make the settlement of Mars safer, more sustainable, and cheaper, ladies and gentlemen. Why is this important? We told you that that's a lesser chance of failing the Mars mission as a whole, a lesser chance of sacrificing human lives. In the long run, you settle on Mars better on our side because you do not try and cram everything into 15 years. Because you do not waste resources using old, expensive technology. Rather, you let there be time to develop cheaper and more cost-effective technologies. They bring up the moon mission and the space race. That was only possible because of the development of cost-effective technologies. We told you that when those technologies are developed and when all things are suitable, there would be enough of an incentive to go to Mars on its own because of all the benefits that they highlight on apparently tourism and resources. The problem that they fail to contend with now is that it is more expensive to go to Mars than it is from what you can get back out of Mars. All the tourism and resources that they talk about and what they get from their side, as well as what their scientists can do, takes a lot of money than what it is worth currently in status quo, which is why on our side, we let things play out. When you have those breakthroughs that they talk about, like the iPad being developed, for example, they bring up, then that is when the Mars mission seems more feasible, not only to the scientific community, but to everyone else. There is a reason why there are no active plans to settle on Mars now. There is a reason why the current Mars missions are focused on gathering samples and testing the survivability of humans. We haven't even narrowed down if there is life on Mars or if there is a possibility humans can live on Mars, and you already aim for settling on Mars in 15 years. We tell you that it is important to wait for breakthroughs, and only our side achieves that because it ensures the scientific community and whatever else is aimed at finding out those things. Whereas on their side, everyone will simply be aimed at settling on Mars and not on exploration, which means all research that will be done would not be on what they say or what they tell you, would not be on the effectiveness of Mars, the survivability of it, or how you would survive, but rather on the settlement of it only because you have to meet a 15-year time frame. And third of all, we told you is that you still have focus on important issues like our Earth. They tell you, concede right out of the bat, that, oh, Mars is our new home. Earth can die for all they care because you already have Mars. We tell you that that is a dream to hope on. We would much rather live with what the entire scientific community believes to be true, which is 2 settlements. Even if our planet dies, you cannot say that, oh, we have Mars. Because inherently, if Mars dies, which is way more likely than our planet dying, or if Mars proves to be uninhabitable in 15 years, you have already, on side proposition, devoted all your resources towards it. Proposition never engaged with any of this directly. Instead, they told you that, oh, it is already there, that, oh, or people already have public interest on it. We told you that if you already have public interest on it, wouldn't it be feasible that you already send missions to Mars? That is not the case because we gave you mechanisms on how it is not feasible. Side proposition had to prove to you how by having this 15-year time limit, you would make it more feasible. Instead, they ran on the assumption that it was already feasible and provided benefits that still work for us. We tell you that we are the only side that unlocks the benefits that they tell you. We are the only side that achieves tourism faster and resources better because we develop more and in a time frame that is more fair, that focuses on more things. So humanity is not built on small time frames. Vote for side opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. And now the reply speech from debate mate B.
Good day again, everyone. As you know, my name is Atfa, and I am summarizing the debate for the proposition that this House believes that humans should settle on Mars within the next 15 years. Firstly, to rebut what the opposition has said in this debate, which is completely invalid and outlandish. Well, your first speaker, as I said before, contradicted their own rebuttal about saying we were rushing the mission, and like what, and then saying, why aren't we going now if we're so prepared? But you're not listening to what we're saying. It shows your lack of understanding about this debate, which is why us, the proposition, should be winning. Additionally, we're not compromising and using up all of human resources on Earth, be it being human and environmental. We're sending a small team of specialized researchers and people who have worked in this field, who are working on these developments to Mars in order to establish a basic presence here, which is what the opposition just seems to not understand throughout the entirety of this debate. Additionally, going on to what your second speaker said, we are not sacrificing human life because we just said that we would be more creative and adaptable and think out of the box about things if we were there on Mars to do some sort of research, studying the geology, like my first speaker, Reza, mentioned. Additionally, we have already sent robots out there. But we want to further our research with humans. The opposition just seems to think that us, the proposition, believe that we don't have no understanding of what's out there and that we're going to be sacrificing everyone, which is simply not true. Additionally, the opposition keeps saying that we are cutting corners. And then this is why we are sending a small group of specialized people to Mars in order to establish the presence, in order to study the environment, in order to develop research here on Earth, which I mentioned in my own speech. Additionally, we have missions, and then we humans are resilient. And we have hope and we have perseverance, which is what my fellow speaker Reza mentioned, which the opposition just seems to believe that humans severely lack, showing that the lack of faith they have in the human race. Additionally, they keep saying that the opposition is not proactive, keeps saying that they will go to Mars in the future. But us, the proposition, are taking advantage of the present moment. Your third speaker mentioned that we're living in a dire situation right now. So why are we waiting to go later, say such a long time in the future to Mars, if we're living in this dire situation, if we're living with these things, forest fires in Australia and California, and things such as that, and hurricanes that are beyond the 1 to 5 category system? Why are we waiting when we could be going within the next 15 years to help save civilization? Additionally, your third speaker also mentioned how you would be how us sending people to Mars is sacrificing and totally destroying the entire human civilization, which is simply not true. Given that, as I mentioned earlier, you said you would be sending people to Earth in the same way, but only later in time, it just shows how hypocritical the side of opposition is being, and how they clearly don't understand what we, the proposition, are saying. We have had missions to Mars. We kind of really understand that they have this basic understanding about what Mars is like already, but we want to further our research and find these new minerals, like my first speaker, Reza, mentioned. Additionally, they did not engage with our characterization of the motion. We are the government in this debate, and then clearly they're not listening to our definition, showing their lack of understanding and why we, the proposition, should be winning this debate. Finally, to summarize why us, the proposition, should be the winners of this debate. My first speaker, Rasa, mentioned how humans are better at research and then how we're more adaptable. And then we can conduct tests on the surface and get first-hand research to really understand what's going on. Industry is interested in going to Mars, and we can develop more things such as finding minerals and developing research projects. Additionally, I mentioned in my own speech about human development, so we can colonize Earth in order to create a better world, and then also innovate technology. Overall, this is why we believe we should colonize Mars in the next 15 years and settle there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I am going to do my calculations and return shortly with my verdicts. Good
Thank you
debate,
very
Thank you
everybody.
for the debate.
Thank you for the debate.
Guys, it was
Thank you so much. You guys were really good.
And I
Thank you
know,
very-
directed towards Rachel, I know it's been like very, very early in the morning for you throughout these debates, so we're very grateful.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
very
yeah.
grateful to have you here and very grateful for all the hard work you've put in to get to this point. So it's been really
Thank
great
you.
to just see kids excited about debate and critical thinking. So, and
Thank you.
it's, I'm a kind of a night owl anyway. So, you know, it's much better to do this around 1 a.m. than 6 a.m. for me. So.
And so it works out then. Right.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, we have our teams. Okay, I'm very excited to give the announcement. Would you prefer to have the feedback off camera and just know the winners on camera? Would that be preferable, or would you want the audience to hear the feedback as well?
It's
Well.
fine if we hear the feedback live.
Live?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
okay.
okay with me.
All right, sure. Okay. I will give you feedback live. Is everybody okay with that? All right, thank you very much. Okay, so ultimately what this debate kind of boiled down to is the impact of time frame versus probability of success, which was sort of carried throughout the debate. Now, it really was a fairly close debate within 10-point differences after everything was calculated. I'm just going to go through everybody's speech line by line. So Reza, you were extremely high in style and rhetoric, and your speeches in general throughout were very poetic, but I do feel like your first speech was, it could have used a bit more structure. So I would have liked to see the definition of settle defined very early on and a very clear discussed mechanism. One thing that would be very important for the government is to tell me why now? Why is it important in the next 15 years? What can we get in the next 15 years that we can't get in 30 years or 50 years? And tell me specifically the reasons. And it can be helpful to have some numbers to prove this. Also, one thing that's very good that I would like to see addressed early on is what are your specific goals? So tell me the how and tell me the why. What are you trying to accomplish by settling Mars? So give me an outline of what you're hoping to achieve. And that's going to give you a very strong impact in the future. And you are also a bit short on time. So for Hannah, I felt like your structure in the beginning of your speech was very, very clear. You know, you gave me an off-time roadmap and you followed it very well. And in general, you were very well organized. What I really liked that you brought up in your first speech was that you wanted to terraform Mars. Expand on that. Tell me more and tell me why do we not have this technology now, but we'll likely have it in 50 years. So why is this better to do something long-term? Also, for your teammates, you should have carried that throughout your speech because it was a very strong opening line. I would have liked to see it extended. I will say that I did feel that it was a speculative that you stated that going to Mars would be a 50-50 gamble. So I think perhaps that was a bit of rhetoric, but it could be better to try to have a bit more research to prove why this is a gamble. Show us about failed missions that have happened in the past and what happens if this failed mission happens with human lives at stake. And one thing that the opposition in general really struggled with throughout the debate was there was this false dilemma fallacy. There was very much sort of this assumption that was never really proven that if we try to do this now, we can't do this later. Okay, so moving on to the second speakers, Tifa. I think that you did a really great job in terms of interrogating the opponents on why all our resources would be used on settling Mars now. And I do feel that this was a strong point for the affirmative, and it never really was addressed fully. You mentioned several issues on Earth, but I need more. Solvency. Show me why settling Mars now would solve it. Even if you can't prove, and it's a very difficult thing that I'm asking you to prove, so you don't need to prove 100% that it will solve, but just give me reasons why it's worth investigating more specifically. I do feel that the government in general sort of needed a bit of a clearer vision on what they were hoping to accomplish, but also, like Reza, I feel like you had a really great stage presence and really good confidence. For Arjun, I felt like you did a great job in capturing your opponent's impact by interrogating their lack of urgency. You basically framed the debate extremely well by saying, okay, what is the benefit of a faster time frame versus probability of success? And you really framed it as we're getting all of the good things that our opponents are getting, plus we're reducing our risk, which was really excellent. I also think that you did great in interrogating the definition of settlement, but I would have liked to see Hannah do this earlier and more clearly. So that way it would have been more continuous throughout the entire debate. And I think that you had fantastic emotion when your statement, we don't support using humans as lab rats. And once again, great job interrogating the mechanism of the Gov. The Gov's major weakness is they didn't have a very clear plan. I really loved your framing of keeping all options open. And I think that I just need to see more reasoning from the opposition about why going to Mars now means we can't go again in the future. So once again, I feel like that was something that I would like to see improved. For third speakers, Reza, I felt like your third speech was really great, huge. I felt like, to me, your third speech was much better than your first. I think that you were amazing in terms of referencing precedent for proving that your goals are achievable. And I think that we could even do even better by showing a bit more of a connection between the precedents and give me an example of the question at hand. I think that you did great in discussing why sending people to Mars is necessary to improve. Expand on that a little bit, because I feel like it's extremely strong and it really, that's really a winning idea right there. So just tell me more about what we're missing out on by not starting now. I mean, you can't, for example, invent the car before you invent the wheel, right? So you have to get started. So talk more about that, because I felt like that was really strong. So I think that once again, you brought up the fact that you can fail once and try again, which was a really major strength for your team. And I think that you mentioned that the opposition didn't really have any clear costs. Neither did you, so that's kind of a wash. Neither side really had very clear costs. But you had a really great rhetoric in terms of hope and perseverance. But you were 90 seconds short, and that was a significant penalty for you. Okay. And Charmaine, I think that you really hit the nail on the head perfectly, really expressed yourself well when you mentioned that the government never really expressed the need for urgency for Mars exploration. You mentioned that their case was dependent on continuous exploration. That was really, really good. So you showed that it's not just a one and done deal, but it's something that's going to cost them throughout time over time. So I think expand on that a little bit more, show why we need to be able to get the benefits more quickly if this is going to be an ongoing cost, and why we'll get more benefits with a little bit more time. So tell me why continuous exploration is more likely or more sustainable in your world compared to the government's world. I do think that you contradicted yourself a bit when you attacked their development and tourism plan, because you mentioned that this would happen later, but you were also trying to attack them for their definition of settlement. So you can't have it both ways. You can only attack them one or the other way. I think that you were, once again, very strong in terms of telling the government how they were not being on topic, and that they weren't really committed to settling as understood by the motion. I think that's really very true. I felt like your side had a very clear idea of what they had in mind in terms of settlement, and that the government was a bit vague on it and didn't really try to assert what they meant. And kind of playing on to our next position, and our last one is the reply speeches. I think that Atifa, you did a really great job framing your side as the side of hope and perseverance, as well as revisiting the false dilemma. But you brought up, and also too late, you brought up that the op failed to engage with your characterization, but you should have brought that up earlier, and you should have tried to make it clear why your characterization was better than their characterization, which you guys didn't, so I have to take their definitions more seriously. And Arjan, I felt like it's generally a pretty good reply speech in terms of revisiting the debate, but you did make some false claims. You mentioned that your side achieved breakthroughs, though you never really specified that in the debate. And you also mentioned that you want to focus on the issues of Earth, and this was still a bit vague, but once again, great attack on their mechanism. So the total for the government was 494.5 points. And the total for the opposition was 304.5 points. So opposition, you are the Mars or Bust champions. So congratulations, dysfunctional debaters. Malaysia has settled Mars first, and they will be awarded the $400 cash prize. And a big thank you to our debate mate competitors as well for their second place cash prize of $200. And you will also be honored at the banquet with being announced what your achievements were. And this banquet is going to have hundreds of people in the space exploration that are going to hear about this. And if there's anything else that you would like to say before I let you carry on, now is the time. Any other final words before we close out this debate?
Yep, we would just like to thank everyone, the organizing team, Rachel, and our opponents here in this debate for the amazing experience. It's truly been a very memorable debate for us.
Yeah.
We
Thank you so much for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Very
Oh,
much.
yes. Oh, yes, just Rachel and then like dysfunctional debaters, you guys were amazing. Thank you so much for organizing this competition in general, and it was an honor being here.
Honored to have you. All right, team, thank you so much. And this will be playing at 7 p.m. Eastern Definition Time at the Mars Society Convention. So have a good day, have a good lunch or breakfast or dinner, wherever you might be. And thank you all, and on to Mars, on to Mars.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.